I'm David Isaac, producer, mix engineer, and artist. And I've worked with such artists as Marcus Miller, Wayne Shorter, David Sanborn, in the jazz categories, to name a few. Anita Baker, Whitney Houston, Stevie Wonder, Eric Clapton, a few. Well, recently just did SMV, which is Stanley, Clarke, Marcus Miller, Victor Wooten. And that one was a memorable one just based on the fact that I didn't know how I was going to mix three bass players, in one project. So that turned out to be a really great because it wasn't as difficult as I thought it would be, based on the fact of the way they played together and the different frequency ranges of each bass player, and the way they arranged the music of how to play around each other. It came out really great. So that one was one that really turned out to be memorable because too, after recording it, they were at the Hollywood Bowl. So to see it come full circle was perfect.
Three bass players, very unusual.
Yeah.
That must have been very challenging since it's something that you don't necessarily hit every day.
Yeah, like I said, I thought, when he first gave me the phone call and said, I'm thinking about doing this thing with Stanley and Victor, it was a long pause on my end because I was like, okay, three bass players, it might work live, when you're just doing a jam session, but a recording, wow, I have to hear that because that's going to be a bear to mix to make sure that each person, their character is heard, especially if if you don't know the artist, and you can run into the trap of, well, make sure I'm loud, and then the other guy, make sure they can hear me, and the other guy, make sure they can hear me. So it's like, how are we gonna do this, guys? But no, the way they worked it out when they sent it to me, it worked out very flawlessly. The only thing on my end is I made sure that I panned them, which was a different concept for me to have a bass on the left side or a bass on the right side. But that way the listeners could instantly know who they were listening to because Stanley stayed in one place, Victor stayed in one place, and Margaret stayed in one place.
Right. And the arrangement obviously was crucial to that.
Yeah, exactly. Especially for, we had to think about listeners who might not have known who they were or what their sound is. So, like I said, you get a sense of Stanley being on the left or Victor on the right and Marcus in the middle. Now you can start to get used to their sound and understand how they are as musicians just by whenever you hear something come from that side or that direction.
Right. So you work mainly at home?
No, it depends. Some things I like to do at home, just so, and based on time. And then some things are based on if I'm going to be incorporating live recordings or depending on how many tracks it is. If I'm working inside Pro Tools, then I usually like to go to a studio. But for Logic stuff, I normally work at home. At home, and we've talked about it, I like to make sure that, for me, it competes with major studios.
Right.
Now, for some of it, it's not necessarily it's about the toys, but it's also about the noise too. It's also about what I'm using. But I know that if you know how to use what you have, it could compete with anything in the big studio. Because sometimes in the big studios, there's a lot of overkill that you don't need. Right. Especially when it comes to mixing if it's recorded properly. Well, I have the Duende, and I have the Core 2. I also have a couple of UAD cards and plugins, for staying inside the box. Because from home, I mix not just music projects, but also do film and TV stuff. So sometimes I'm doing a lot of it in one day, so I have to go back and forth between things. So I really wanted something where I can literally just shut one project down and go right to something else, and everything follows me quickly. Especially if I get a phone call from somebody, hey, can you open up the TV show and make one change? Okay, fine. Blah, blah, blah. I used the Duende. I got into that about a year ago after NAMM, because I wanted something to where I could feel like I had a console, because I missed having a console, the console concept in my software. You know? I mean, yes, Logic has things or Pro Tools has things, but I still wanted the console, you know, even inside the box. So when one of the guys at SSL told me about that, I said, okay, right, you got to send it to me so I can check it out. And once they did, instantly with the bus compressor, I felt like I was at an SSL console. You know what I mean? And it took a while to get guys like Marcus to when I would say, hey, I don't want to go into the studio, I can do it at home. Well, you know, they got an SSL. Yeah, I got an SSL at home. You know, so I tell you what, let me mix it and send it to you before we have to go in the studio. We can go in the studio. Now it's harder for me to get him into the studio now, because he's like, can you do it at home? You know, because of budgets or whatever. So, you know, but so it let me know that it served its purpose. That it definitely gave me that.
Right. And you worked on several SSL consoles too.
Yeah, I've been working on SSLs since late 70s. You know, and a lot in the 80s.
Right.
A lot in the 80s. Yeah.
So we can safely assume that you know what the SSL console sounds like.
Yeah, that used to be the go-to thing. You know, it was always about getting it to the SSL and mixing it on the SSL.
Right. So, what is it about the Duende that you really latched onto?
Well, you know, first it was the color and the sound of the bus compressor, that tight sound. Especially if I'm dealing with R&B or hip hop stuff, something dealing with drums. I really got into the EQs because, again, I felt like I was on the SSL board again. You know what I mean? Even though it's I don't have that actual circuitry, you know. But as long as I see it and I get that feeling, that musical feeling, I'm on the SSL again. And if I hear that, I'm cool.
Right.
You know, now I can talk to the engineers and they can tell me other things, but as long as I see and feel it, for me, I got what I need. I'm glad that along the way you guys came out with some other plugins like the drum strip and things like that. So I've been playing with those. Just got into the XEQ and the XComp, and I love those, which are more like, I guess, mastering EQs. You know, I can get more surgical with those than with the others. So, you know, and I like the fact that I have multiple channels of it, you know, because when I was using other things, I won't say what gear, but I could only have certain instances, and then I start to hear it affect the software. You know what I mean? I start to hear it crunching, you know, distort. So, but with the Duende, I can use almost as many as I want. You know what I mean? I don't like to use a lot, but I know I can use, when I go down, I can use as many as I want, and I won't start to hear it change the sound of the mix as far as when I start to reach CPU problems. You know.
How would you characterize the impact it's had on everything that you've been doing since then?
I want more. You know, that's why I want to play with all the plugins, and now I want to get into the, you know, more of the extracts and the other gear, you know, just so that way, you know, I know that I have everything I need, you know, because as far as what to do to the music, I know what to do to the music. It's just what tools am I going to use to do it with, you know, and I always used to let certain guys know, you know, that might have been coming up and they might be new in the industry, and they say, well, what should you use? Or should I get this, or should I get that? I would always say, just know your gear and know what you need to do. And as long as you know those two things, you can make it work. For me, you know, if I know what I have to make me feel comfortable, which part of that has always been SSL, because I just came up with it. It's almost like being born in Detroit in Motown. You know, R&B and soul and gospel and some of that just gonna be a part of what I do. It's just a part of my makeup. So when I mix, there's a soul that comes out of it, or there's a thing. So it's the same thing for me with some of the gear. It has to be something that I have a connection to,
Right.
that I can tap into like that. So for me, SSL is part of that. You know what I mean? And right now, it's the industry is going to where, you know, guys can do it in the box, or they like to recall features of different things, and so do I. So, you know, for me to have that all in one box makes my day.